find that out very soon.
Well, you know, there's another thing too. I've had over the last 20 years so many cameras on me.
Oh, Lord.
I'm at the point where it's okay to
Well, that's
run another
good.
camera.
Yeah, so you're actually cool with it. Well, that's nice.
I've had cameras in extremely invasive that can be done to me anymore. This is exactly what I was thinking about.
It is?
Nightshade presents Dr. Burisch blamed for La Quinta fire.
Oh, lovely. George Knapp here. Oh,
Reporting
lovely.
from La Quinta.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, and I'm very pleased to be with Dan Burisch.
There,
And,
I just introduced myself.
Well, actually, I would like you to sort of give a brief introduction, who you are and what you're known for. Maybe
What
what
I'm
you'd
known
like to
for,
be known for.
Aside from cantankerous activities and disobeying certain authority structures. No, well, I'm a microbiologist, a retired one now, but continuing somewhat the practice involved in a very unusual project called Lotus. I am a 20-year retiree from Majestic, first having been brought in 1986 under the auspices of the Committee of the Majority, and specifically working for the Majestic 12 assigned to Project Aquarius. I suppose I'm more known for meeting a J-Rod and working at S4. Aside from that, I don't really know what I'm known for, aside from irritating a bunch of people on the web that don't want to hear about me.
Okay, so you worked for Majestic, and you were basically, I mean, in brief, and I know there's a really long history
Right,
as
the
to
Lotus
how
was
you
an
ended.
accessory project. It wasn't, you know, it was funded because everything that I was doing at the time was being funded ultimately by them. But it was an accessory project. It wasn't something of a critical nature for the Majestic, or as I believed for a long time. However, the principle of the Lotus ultimately ended up being a rather earth-shaking item for the participants at the T9 conference a couple of years ago.
What is the T9 conference?
During the course of speaking with extraterrestrials and our interactions with them from the 1950s onward, there have been a series of treaties established between we and they meaning a future human intelligence, time travelers. And there have been as a consequence of our relationship with them, there have been more than one treaty system in place. During the last of one of those treaty negotiation and signing times, I had the privilege of being in the presence of the negotiators at the conference, which was held in the state of New Mexico.
And there were how many aliens present at that time?
There were 2, 4, 6, and a few in the strollers behind the curtains. So we had
A few in I'm sorry, what was that reference?
They're unable to cope for long periods of time in our atmosphere.
I
Our
see.
present atmosphere. They've adapted, if you will, to the atmospheres of their particular future timeline, and as a consequence, coming here would be oppressive to them, existing in our standard temperature and our pressure. So they have been provided unique, sealed off, pressurized systems that they would be moved around in by their attendants, basically on a Segway type transport system, where you can push it and it will actually move forward, very easily maneuverable.
I see. So that's what you meant by stroller
Right.
system.
Right.
Okay.
And so they were encapsulated in their strollers in their positions as negotiators for their time. And
Are you saying that these aliens that were present at this conference that happened, what, this year, last year? A couple years ago, in which they discussed, I'm assuming it was
between
the Lotus.
2003 and 4.
I'm sorry?
Between 2003 and 2004.
Okay, and they discussed the Lotus project.
It was brought up, and in fact, as part of the negotiations, the P plus 45,000 group of J-Rods wanted the codes for the Lotus Principle added into the treaty negotiations so that they could use it in their own attempts to ameliorate their particular neuropathies.
Wow. So they saw the value. They saw the value right away.
They saw a potential value for it, and they wanted to use it for that purpose. It was my argument that it should not be used for a particular purpose, that this is moreover part of a natural system which has been put in place by whatever God one would want to deign as being the creator of the universe, as part of a natural system and not to be controllable by humankind.
Or by alien kind,
they're humans. They're human
you
lineage.
Consider them humans.
They're humans.
Okay.
They're human beings, albeit different from what we would expect to see as a human being. But then again, if we look in the history, the presently accepted history of the evolution of humankind, if one were to walk into a conference held by Neanderthals, one would be taken aback. Well, in the same way, one may be taken aback by walking into a conference with these gentlemen.
Okay. So you've got two kinds of aliens, and people that are watching this, some people may have no idea about the T2, two timelines.
Probably not. We actually had three kinds of extraterrestrials, human lineage extraterrestrials present. Two kinds of P plus 45,000 years from now, if we were to translate over to timeline 2. Difficult subjects, aren't they? Two representatives from that time, two representatives from P plus 52,000 years ahead, J-Rods, both of which generally have the anatomical configuration of what would be in ufology called grays, gray aliens, and two representatives from P plus 52,000 Orions, who would generally, I guess, in ufological circles, I guess one could say, would be called Nordics or Tals.
Okay.
Who actually look more human-like, but have larger eyes, very blue eyes, blondish hair, etc.
I see. And, okay, well, of course I've got many questions on this score.
So do I.
But, and for people listening, we would also like to know, were there any reptilians present?
No, not per se.
Okay.
What I've come to understand, and it's generally held, I think I could say it's generally held within our society, that the notion of a reptilian is a misnomer. And I'm not saying that to apply a negative connotation to the stories that individuals have brought forward, probably mostly forthrightly. But that when you view or observe what would be called a gray, what I would call a J-Rod, the particular ruddy configuration of their skin, the changes of the sudoriferous glandular structure of their skin, can make them appear during exacerbations of the illness very reptilian in appearance, and also possibly praying mantis type in appearance. They're also suffering from a cocaine-like syndrome, which makes them lurch forward, so they appear very praying mantis-like. So I think that possibly many of the accounts which have forthrightly come from individuals whom have actually been abducted by the P-45s have maybe been interpreted as being reptilian in appearance because of their skin structure. But they're not really reptiles.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying, I'm trying to be inclusive here, that there are things in the mind of man and in the glorious universe of God that I don't know. That there's a possibility that individuals have encountered alien species not to my reference. Given the fact, I've had to accept the fact that there are human beings that many years ahead of us on another timeline coexisting in reality. How hard would it be for me to accept that there are other extraterrestrials of non-human lineage, of which I've only been briefed about one, which is an extra-dimensional species, whom have referenced other extraterrestrial species that I know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it for me to accept that after I've been in the presence of a human lineage extraterrestrial? I don't have a problem with that, but at the same time, I don't have evidence to support it either. Reptilian in that if one were under stress and one had no previous reference to their biology, their pathophysiology, their particular problems, one could reasonably expect out of a group of people experiencing them that more than 50% of the group could probably say that they were reptilian in appearance.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's the best I
So
can
their
say.
appearance morphs to some degree into more of a reptilian under stress, is what you're saying?
I'd say that
maybe you
people
don't like
could
the word
interpret
morph.
them that way.
Okay.
Reasonably be expected
Visually.
to interpret them that way if they do not have a scientific grounding in what they're looking at.
Sure.
I'm trying to be inclusive of reports of individuals that have no reason to have come forward and say things that they've said for other than the fact that they've experienced something. I'm trying to understand, or maybe help people to understand why they may have interpreted as well.
Sure.
These things in this way. However, they may have actually come into contact with something which was fully reptilian in appearance. I don't know. I haven't.
Exactly.
I'm trying to be honest and at the same time tell people, because apparently it's happened to me, that it's okay.
That apparently
that they were
what's happened.
abducted and that it's happened.
Okay.
That they're not
Apparently,
crazy,
what has happened to you?
Well, in 1973, I was playing in a park in Southern California in Mayberry Park, and this is going to probably come out in one or more of the versions of the debriefing of me. I was playing baseball with my grandpa in the park, and I was having him throw me a ball so I could catch it over my shoulder. I was trying to run away at the same time that he would throw the ball so I could try to catch the ball like Willie Mays' famous catches. During one of these throws of the ball, I remember looking up toward the sun because it was high in the sky at the time. It was summertime, and glancing away because the sun was blinding me, looking down toward the grass, which was very bright green at the time, and then seeing a flash where the grass appeared to turn black. I appeared, from my perspective, I was covered in a shadow. The shadow reminded me of a triangular bat kite that I had played with my grandfather over the riverbed nearby. And that's the way I basically was able to describe it at the time. I was, 9? I was 9 at the time. Then I remember a flash. Immediately, there's a disjoint memory of this. It's not contiguous. Where I saw my grandfather sitting over by a tree several yards away from me. And the sun had clearly moved in its aspect to me, so time had clearly passed. The earth had moved and time had passed. At least several hours had passed. He was very shook up. I ran over to him, asked him what happened, and he didn't want to talk about it. He said, you're okay now, and he wanted to go home. So he walked me home immediately over the overpass over Del Amo Boulevard, and we went home. This precipitated a major domestic upset between my grandparents and my mom and dad. Ultimately, this domestic upset resulted in my grandparents moving out. And around that same time, I was having unusual dreams. And in the dream, I would wake up. Do I think that there were probably dreams now? No. But I would wake up and I would walk from my bedroom through the restroom, which connected between my bedroom and a small laundry area that went to a doorway off the north side of our house. And to the right of that laundry area, there was a closet. That's the closet where my grandpa used to put his work jacket and his work boots. He worked at Gaffers and Sattlers as an enamel dipper, dipping pieces in enamel for manually for things like appliances, stoves, etc. And he would come home every day just covered in enamel dots all over his jacket and his boots. And I would open the door to that closet, and that's all I can remember from the dream. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I was meeting somebody called Harry. He was a little friend. And I know that as knowledge that I met a little friend there, but I have no visual memory of what Harry looked like. It was finally, because I finally told my mom and dad about it, and it was finally rationalized away that because I was still watching Sesame Street at the time, that was Oscar the Grouch. And that's the way my mom put it. She said, "You're thinking about Oscar the Grouch because he looks furry and hairy." And from that time on, as the dreams continued, I then remember seeing Oscar the Grouch in my dream, but not in the closet, in the restroom, or past the restroom. But I remember just seeing a picture of Oscar the Grouch, so I felt very calm about it. After that, I accepted it as a boy.
So you were abducted in something that you don't remember the details of. Is that the actual experience once?
Yeah, I told you what the actual memory of it from my boyhood. That is it. Now, I remember possibly, and I'm not sure over the years whether this was confabulation or not, because I was a boy at the time. I think I remember seeing a tall person, like if you take a movie frame, like one frame, like a flash of a still picture, like an iconic memory almost, of a tall person standing next to him at the tree.
Next to your grandpa.
My grandpa. Yeah.
Okay.
And he refused until the day he passed to discuss what happened. He would become extremely agitated. And John and Dodie for certain, who had many conversations with him, and maybe even John would...
this is your father and mother you're talking about.
They're my mom and dad that I grew up with. Now, I've learned certain things about my family since then that are really neither here nor there, having to do with who was actually biological father and biological mother and things like that. But they were my mom and dad. They're my mom and dad. I mean, they're the mom and dad that I remember growing up with, and I... But
they are not MJ1.
No.
Okay, but
no.
And MJ1, somehow this abduction your experience seemed to have resulted in you becoming or being viewed as the son of MJ1. Is that correct?
Right. What happened is this. I also learned of what happened to me from Kaela, the J-Rod that I met at S4. He showed me from his perspective what had happened to me in 1973. I saw myself being pulled by my chest upward off the surface of the park I saw my grandfather going like this and basically panicking, crying, because he wasn't able. My grandpa was very protective of me, and he wasn't able to protect me. And now I understand, God bless him, why he was so upset. The one person in his whole life that he knew that he would protect, that he loved that much to protect, he couldn't at that moment. And I understand why he was so upset. But the J-Rod showed me what happened to me, that I was picked up and that I was laid down on a table in some sort of a craft. And that this craft was a generally chevron-shaped, almost triangular shaped craft. And I was laid down next to a series of young people, one of which was in fact the son of the former MJ1. Something went wrong during the course of my time on board the craft when samples were being taken of me for their studies. And the son of the former MJ1 died. During that time, they put some sort of equipment on me. It almost looked like EEG type, a neural net, if you will, of receivers, probes, electrodes, if you will, on me. And they were trying to save, desperately trying to save, and I could see the movement of the J-rods around this other boy. And I know what he looked like and all of that, because I was seeing it through the eyes of Kyla. They were trying to save him, and he ultimately passed. During that time, apparently they were trying with whatever technology that they employ to save the boy by storing him. That Kyla was with the P-45s at the time. These were P-45, 1,000 J-rods. And they looked at us, and they look at us as no more than containers or cylinders, almost like beakers full of material, of electromagnetic material. And so they were trying to store his energy, if you will. Right. Marcia suggested the word vessels. Right. They were trying to store him for a while, I guess, in me. Now, my memory of myself at the time was a rather dull boy that liked to play baseball and with G.I. Joes and things like that. The record of me at the time was that I had an okay acuity in science. That's what the elementary school teachers were saying. I don't remember having acuity like that in science. And there's a disjoint in my own story of myself because of this. Because after I was put down back in the park, over the course of the next couple of years, there were changes in me. But then again, there should have been, because I was growing up. But there was a substantive intellectual change in me, where I was no longer interested in those same things of my youth. Was that maturation? Probably some of it. Was it a change as a result of what was done with me on board the craft? The Majestic thinks so. Thinks that it had something to do with that other boy, because that other boy was known as very bright in the sciences. And all of a sudden, true enough, I got a hankering for Erlenmeyer flasks and boiling flasks and microscopes that I had never had before.
Okay, but...
And I've possessed ever since.
On some level, the MJ1's son that was on the craft next to you, that possibly you received a soul transfer from, is the MJ the MJ group had to be cognizant of what was going on. In other words,
they knew that had happened.
And they knew during the time...
He's admitted to me that they knew that had happened at the time.
But in other words, was this... so you were chosen, in a sense.
I believe that I was... The only evidence... I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. The evidence that I have was that I was, from hearing about the sampling program, was that I was picked up as a random population sample. The son of a blue-collar worker, and just the son of my family was total blue-collar. But there are a lot of coincidences that suggest that people were moved into a place to later teach me that happened before 1973. Can I put my finger on that and say, oh yeah, they knew what was going to happen to me and that I was going to be picked up? I can't say that because I wouldn't be honest. But I get the feeling as though, Marcia has held up 2 letters to me, LG, for Looking Glass.
Oh,
I see.
I see.
I'm sitting here in the presence of an individual that actually knows more of the truth and cannot tell me, for whatever reason, more of the truth about what's happened to me than I know.
Okay.
She's just held up the letters LG for Looking Glass. She's indicating to me that they knew.
In other words, and Looking Glass is the ability to look into the future. So what you're suggesting is that
machine for that use, yeah.
MJ12 was using Looking Glass, perhaps saw that the first son of MJ1 was going to die, and planned to groom you to carry on.
It's possible.
In his place.
It's possible. Mm-hmm. But I've never been told by them that.
Did J-Rod...
Excuse me, but the hints have been, forthcoming that is the reality involved. Because, even, and I don't know for certain that he was ever read into the program. God bless him, Jim, my mentor, Dr. Jim Reynolds. He was moved into places that almost set him up perfectly for Dodie's call, my mom's call that day, to talk with him at Long Beach Memorial Hospital. And she has since admitted, she admitted to Marcy that she received a sum of money. There are some not good things here, and I still love them both for everything that they've done for me, but yet there's an incompatibility now because I'm still the 8 or 9-year-old boy in their eyes that they are willing to try to take sovereignty away from. It produces an incompatibility in the relationship.
What we're trying to find out, though, is how did you hook up with MJ1 after that?
Well, the first time that I saw him was at the back of the meeting room at the George C. Page Museum when I was a member of the Los Angeles Microscopical Society.
How old were you?
13, 14.
So it was a few years after.
It was a few years after I started becoming really interested in all of the beakers and the microscopes and things like that, where I was introduced to Jim Reynolds at Long Beach Memorial Medical Center. Jim Reynolds then introduced my mom and myself to John DeHaas, who was then an associate professor of protozoology, as I understand, at the University of Southern California. He was also the head of DeHaas Optical, a microscope salesman, who then put me in contact with the Los Angeles Microscopical Society at the George C. Page Museum, with whom he was associated as a member, as a senior member, in fact, at the time. During the course of my association with the LA Micro Society, I saw the former MJ1 walk in the back doorway. I sat at the back right of the room, which was where my spot kind of was. And I noticed him just standing back there, and he kind of just blended in with the crowd that was kind of coming and going. And he looked at me, and I looked at him because I noticed he was laying a little too long of a gaze on me. And I was paranoid as it was. I was scared to death just being around these bright people. These were accomplished scientists. Zane Price was one of them, who was the head of the Electron Micro Lab at UCLA. I mean, these were accomplished people. And I noticed he laid this gaze on me from the back of the room, and he took his lighter, and he opened, it was a Zippo lighter, and it had a United States Navy seal on it. And he just popped it and lit it, and closed it up, and walked out the back door. I had no idea who this dude was. Scared to ask anybody because I didn't want to look stupid. You know, I was a geeky teen. Later on, I find out that he just wanted to introduce himself to me early on. He wanted to see where I was in my life at the time. Now, of course, the association was already established because of the son Michael and all of that business from 73. This was like 1975, 76, right in that general time frame.
So, okay.
So that's my first meeting with him, but I didn't really meet with him at the time. He showed himself to me.
I understand. And you have since developed a relationship with him such that there is affection there, and he does consider you his son.
He treats me very son-like, yes.
Okay. But would you also say that it's his, he regards you as his son literally, or he must be conscious of the shift or the transfer that took place.
He knows what happened on board. We've had long discussions about this.
Okay.
In fact, during we had an entire night discussion about it one night. You know, I'm trying to do the right things by everybody, and that's the only reason why. To be honest, I mean, my debriefing must come out to the public to the extent that the authentic message, the truthful message of what I've seen, comes out. And that concerns the extraterrestrial issue. But the rest of it, my losing my knees out at Mayboyer Park and falling at the base of the tree where my grandpa was, that's not required. But for people to know that it's not bullshit, that there's a real human being behind it, as messed up as they are, probably more. But yeah, they ought to know that.
I'm going to tell you honestly, when I saw Bill Hamilton's segment interview with you, and you're talking about your relationship with J-Rod and how you communicated with him telepathically, that struck me as incredibly real. And from that point on, I was very interested in what you had to say, because I said, this man really experienced this. This is not bullshit. This is the real thing.
Yeah.
So if you could reiterate kind of how you started working with J-Rod.
Well, he was working with me before I ever knew it. Of course, he was on board, as I understand. I have no memory of him directly, but I mean, as I understand, in 73. He had traveled to 73, and then this is even what I said to Jeff Ransom on the phone. You know, I said, my God, if this doesn't it boggles my mind when you think about paradoxes to start with. That he traveled to 73, I was picked up, and then he subsequently traveled back to the 53 time frame, and there was a crash, which means that he was held at S4 in 1973 at the time that I was playing baseball with my grandpa, and that he was also on board the craft, impinging into our time, lifting me up. Prosaically, I mean, it sounds crazy, but you know, it's a paradox, I guess. I mean, but I actually came into direct contact with him at the end of 1993, start of 94. Yeah, there's something wrong with him. During the entirety of my experience around him, he appeared, the best that I can describe is off-shifted. Almost like, well, I mean, he was physical. I felt him through the glove. There was matter there with me, but almost like he was a ghost with a body. He didn't belong. He did not belong where he was. Yet, when he would communicate, when he would do the entrainment, they thump you. It's almost acoustically. They thump you. And until they finally come into contact with the brain level waves where they can begin communicating. And it comes in waves. It's almost like clicks of a dolphin. It comes in waves. And then you feel yourself pulled in as the entrainment is occurring, that the perception is being pulled into his eyes. Very unwieldy feeling. But then they entrain, bringing you down to relaxed almost to a theta state, like an 8 hertz type theta state, where you're very almost like drowsy, and they tell you, they're not going to hurt you. He did that. He actually said that he would not harm me. When he stepped forward on me when we were doing the old bride's dance, as we nicknamed it, where I was supposed to step forward to him, almost like taking a bride step up the aisle, and then he did the thing back to me, almost jokingly, but it was so unwieldy because he broke the protocol. It's like everything that had been established of trust at that moment, it went to hell. And I got so afraid. There was an animal response in me at that moment, a very, very human animalistic response of get me the hell out of here. And I stepped backward and fell backward onto my back. And that is really what I perceived myself as doing. I said to Jeff, felt like I was a cockroach, lying on my back in there. And he walked up onto me, and I heard them yelling, "Fire the repress." They were going to intumesce him. They were going to hurt him so that he wouldn't hurt me. And I was trying to yell no, and I'm not even sure to this day if I really yelled no or if it was just in my mind. The stress was that bad at the moment. And he literally walked up onto me and sat on my chest. He didn't knock me over. I mean, there was, I think Ron or a couple other people said, he knocked you over in the clean. He couldn't knock me over. He was too weak to knock me over. He even if he wasn't given his size, he couldn't have knocked me over.
And how tall was he?
Just a little over 3 feet, hunched down, almost 4 feet if he was to be extended out lengthwise, if he would be lying on his back and extended out lengthwise. But the malady, the pathologies under which he was suffering caused him to have weakness, change of gait, change of stance, where most of the time he was extremely hunched over forward, and he really couldn't stand up straight. When he would walk, he would wobble and kind of shuffle.
So he got on your chest. He walked onto your chest, sat on your chest.
He was actually sitting on my abdomen area, but he was leaning forward with his hands onto my chest, looking down.
So he was communicating at that moment that he wasn't going to hurt you?
Yes, he said, I won't hurt you, Beanie. He called me Beanie. And that goes to Beanie. He broke English up very strangely.
And you heard this in your head, I'm assuming. I
heard it in my head.
It wasn't out loud.
No, I heard it in my head, in my own introspective voice, but clearly not coming from me. You know the sound of yourself when you talk to yourself, self-talk. It's the same sound, except it's the wrong linguistics. It's the wrong wording. You could tell it's not you. And initially when that happens too, there is from my perspective, initially when it was happening, there was a very panicky feeling. But of course, that initially happened when I was part of the B unit team when Stephen was still going in to the clean sphere. He looked at me through the clean sphere and spoke to me and said, "I remember," and hello.
Meaning
to me.
the person who it was, you call, what is his name again? The J-Rod looked at you.
Kaela
looked at you when Steve was in the clean sphere with him. He turned around and looked at you.
Yeah, he turned around and looked at me. I was part of the B unit team to start with. In fact, that was going to be my actual occupation in there, was assisting the chief scientist in going into the clean sphere, until he identified me as somebody, I guess, special to him, Kaela, and he wanted me to be the person to go in there. That's why I was promoted ultimately to the working group leader in there, because I didn't have the background, did not have the seniority, and it was not my place. But that's why the promotion happened. It was one of
Okay,
those,
so
well,
to
a lot
go
of
back,
promotions happen in the world, I think, but
but to go back
the
to
Peter
where
principle.
he went onto your chest. He told you he wasn't going to hurt you. Did they actually zap him then, or did they?
I don't believe so, because I would have felt he began to entrain me immediately and strongly, and he relaxed me. The encapsulins, the endorphins were going big time. They entrain on several levels, and they're able to relax you by actually flooding you with natural opiates.
Mm-hmm.
Like a runner's high.
Right.
So what happened after that? I'm assuming
Or
you
the
got
high
to
that you receive as you're going through natural death process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you naturally kick
Yeah.
out the,
Yeah.
But okay, but what happened after that?
After that, I began to sink away from what was going on in the clean sphere, and with the panic that was going on over the radios, because I heard them. We had two separate units, an A unit and a B unit on the radio. They were like separate radio frequencies, and I could push the button and talk independently, but they were stepping over each other, screaming, saying, "Get a secondary unit ready to get me out of there." They were going to enter in to pull me out, and you can't just step in there that quickly. I mean, they've got to suit somebody up, bring them in, and you knew before you were going in there that the J-Rod, we were trained that they were a threat. And
Really?
so that we were not supposed to communicate privately with them or anything like that, that we had a certain job to do and we were to get it done. And that was the scientific job of removing the samples, and then the studying of the samples for the back engineering. These are the reversing like chemicals.
The idea was to reverse an illness that he and his people have, which is the 52.
The 52s, and what we were trying to do initially, jumping off onto the biology a little bit, what we were trying to do is we were trying to actually strip the exterior cytoplasm off from the cells and produce cells which would be independently functioning, then to understand those cells biochemically, genetically, so that those cells could then be re-added as a graft into the J-Rod to attempt to ameliorate the neuropathy. That's what one of the stated goals was. Easier said than done. But
Okay.
we were told, though, that if something would go wrong in there would be no immediate fix. You weren't a million miles away, but you were several thousand when you were inside there. So you were very alone, even though you had radio communication. It was essentially being isolated on the space shuttle, if you will. And not that easy to get you home. Because they had to do all of the repressurizations of the gantry, bring somebody new in, then get you out, then get you detox, the cleansing, the decontamination, and then get you out of there, then get you out of the suit, then give you medical treatment. So we're talking a couple hours. So if something goes wrong in there, and they're potentially able to harm you because of the entrainment, you're dead. And that's, you accepted before you ever accepted going in there. But to a large part, it wasn't it wasn't bravado on our part saying it's no big thing, but you had to accept that just to work inside the facility. You knew that if there was a contamination, if the alarms started going off, the old joke was get in a straight back chair and lean way over and kiss your goodbye. It was over. Because if the alarms started going off, you were sealed into the facility, and they were going to pump the gas in and fire the fuel air device. Boom. That's what the explosive valves were for, the so-called escape tunnels. For you to get out in case there was an emergency, those were blow-off vents. So they could blow off and explode the facility, blow off out of the papoose range, and keep the remainder of the facility intact.
So, but your experience with the J-Rod and the other ones you've met has basically, were you afraid for your life at any time? In other words,
I was afraid for my life when he stepped toward me. Absolutely, I was.
At that moment. At
that moment, but it was a very transient. It was an ephemeral moment.
Okay. How did you?
It passed off very quickly because biochemistry helped me calm down when he trained me.
How did you feel, though, in your sort of interactions with him? In other words, do you feel that you said you didn't remember knowing him in the original meeting in the spaceship, right?
Right.
But he remembered clearly.
He remembered.
So, did you feel that you actually developed a friendship with this being?
I absolutely did.
And that it grew over time, or did you feel that it was instantly there?
That's a good question. I'll say that I felt a kinship to him all along from the time that he first looked over at me. And that may have been a consequence of me being picked up in the park. That may have been. My trust in what he was saying to me grew over time.
Because I remember asking you that.
Yeah,
specifically asking you that.
My trust grew over time.
But
there
perhaps
was an extant
level,
kinship there with him. And I think that may have started because of the pickup in '73. I think, but I'm trying to surmise it. There was a pickup of the jovial nature of our friendship over time, certainly, because I've got kind of a strange sense of humor, and he was able to be friends with that kind of same weird sense of humor, where he would look over at me, he would tell me that what his behavior was, because I couldn't tell when he was happy or when he was sad because of physical characteristics that easily. You can tell fairly quickly with a human being from now if they're happy, if they're smiling at you, but I couldn't tell if that was pain or what it was on his face until he specifically informed me that that's his smile, that's his laugh. As that grew, and my relationship with him grew, I became more attuned to his physical responses as well, and I think that picked our friendship up as well, because I'm more associating with another human being with the physical reactions as well, in the communication, and they were less so. So that was difficult. That was very difficult until I became attuned, where I became more relaxed into what his physical responses were. When I knew he was laughing after that, then that got me into trouble with the folks in the facility, because I reacted naturally to his physical responses. And so I would smile or whatever over at him, and they would say, "What is transpiring between you two?" I'd hear it come over the radio. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I would out and out lie to them and say nothing, because I was afraid. I had a fear of losing his friendship too, because I wanted to learn more from him. And so I was willing, And these are the same people that, will point a gun at me with very little compunction against it. I was willing to befriend him too, because he was a captive there, as I was feeling too a captive within Majestic, because I had been brought into a program that I had no clue before what I was being brought into. So I felt kind of trespassed against too.
Mm-hmm. So you had a camaraderie in that sense.
Yeah, we were both prisoners in our own right.
Did you think that he had the ability to protect you?
No. In fact, it was, if anything, it was the other way around.
Oh.
I was covering for him, and a lot of his anger, because he had anger in him too, and pain, and anger as a result of pain from the samples being removed. I was covering for him by not telling them of the anger, because then they would have followed an operant conditioning protocol that had been set in against him to penalize him. So I was actually protecting him.
So, but
he was a human being, for Christ's sake. I mean, if you get stuck with a needle enough times, you get perturbed. And when you're being treated like crap on top of it, a prisoner is a prisoner.
In what way was he treated like crap, as you put it?
If he wouldn't respond as they told him, they would fire a repress valve and change the pressurization in the clean sphere, causing mild to moderate intumescence, a change of pressure in his skin, because he was of lesser density, physical density, as in weight per volume, that density. And the reason why I'm clarifying that is I've heard a lot of new agey comments about fourth density and fifth. I don't know about all of that. As in weight per volume type density, he was less dense physically than we were. His bone structure was less dense than we were. So when they would fire the repress valve, or they would intumesce him, it would cause him great pain. And I was screaming no, and I think, the time that he stepped up onto me, I think they thought the better of it at the moment, because he was clearly and training me at that moment. So if they would have fired the pressurization at that point, I would have felt the pain that he was feeling. And it
Right,
maybe
because
killed me, I don't know.
You developed from what I understand, you developed, like the movie E.T., you developed the ability to actually feel his pain.
Well, it wasn't even developed. It was immediate.
Oh, it was immediate.
The thing which was developed, and I'm not sure, it may have actually been some sort of a neurological habituation. I'm not certain of that. But the thing which was developed was the inability to disentrain, to break off from him.
Even when you left the clean sphere? In other words, regardless of where you were?
Within a certain range, within, like a 15-meter range from him.
For example, right now?
I could...
Right now, could you feel his pain?
No.
If you wanted you to feel it, could you?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe that they're capable. I mean, we're talking time difference.
Mm-hmm.
His lack of physical existence in our reality. And even if we're talking no time difference, we're talking about a linear distance of how far between here and reticulum, good God. No.
He's back at reticulum now.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Uh-huh.
As far as I'm aware. My stomach is growling. I must be getting hungry.
Right, okay.
As far as I'm aware, that's where he returned to. That's the best information I have. And frankly, from the time that, when it happened in 2003, they don't even want to discuss the matter with me, because it's a real sore point. I did what I was not supposed to do.
You pushed him through a time hole.
I pushed him into one of the Stargate units. Yeah, into the gray patch between the posts. Yeah.
And that was at the end of your relationship with him?
That was the end of it. It's the last time I saw him.
I mean,
I think it was the end of their relationship with him too, which is why they're so pissed off.
Why were you motivated to push him into?
He asked me to. He told me he wanted to go home. He wanted to see his son. So I did.
So he was a prisoner, but at some point you were in a position. I'm thinking this was in Egypt. Somehow you guys were taken to Egypt.
Yeah, I was flown there. Yeah.
And so was he.
Yeah, but over a different transport. He was already present by the time of my arrival. There was a communication protocol going on. He was communicating something, and I was never really told. All I was told was that there was a problem with his communication, and they wanted me to be there to cause him to relax or whatever to facilitate the discussion. And so they wanted me basically there as an idola theatri, as an idol of the theater. They wanted me present. They wanted me there as a ruse of kinship with him.
And
And the kinship was no ruse, and that's something that they misinterpreted, I guess, over these years, that I have more of a kinship with a present-day human versus him. And to me, although he was offset, although he appeared different, that he didn't belong, he's still a human being, and a human is a human is a human to me. So I had a true friendship with him. There was a true affection there between the two, because he was showing me things from his childhood, and I was showing him things from mine, and we were actually enjoying each other's experience of each other, a friendship. It was a true friendship, and I don't really think that Majestic ever regarded it that way. They feel themselves so damn superior, or that we're superior to them. And maybe it's a reaction. I don't know, maybe I'm rationalizing it, that it's a reaction to the P-45's feeling that we're inferior, the so-called rogues' feeling of us. Maybe it's some sort of a railing against that, or a reaction against that they developed the attitude. I don't know, but I know that I wasn't superior to him, and he wasn't superior to me. Much brighter, but we're still just human beings. And just because somebody is brighter than somebody else, it doesn't mean they're superior.
So I'm just trying to figure out why in Egypt he was there. I'm obviously doing some work with them.
He was there as part of a communication program that they had ongoing after our program, and way after, almost a decade.
Almost 10 years later.
Well, I mean, it had ended in 96, and we had some more briefings in 97, but that was about it.
So you're saying that this happened recently, that you pushed him into the Stargate?
It happened at the end of 2003. And, I could tell from the relationship with him that he was being honest with me. Now, again, there have been those that have criticized and said, well, look, this guy has 52,000 years along an evolutionary line, which does not necessarily make him smarter, but certainly not better if you look at the pathology, but that he had the ability, if he was a human being, to lie. Mm-hmm. Yep. And we talked with each other about lying, and Majestic never knew that. But he told me about things which would be happening in the future, generally inconsequential things. And then there were some very consequential items. But some generally inconsequential things that happened subsequent, which told me not only was he from the future, that he had access to future material, because nobody could have predicted conversations, but that he was being honest with me as well. I could feel his heart. And that's all we can really do. They turn it into a joke on Coast to Coast. The Coast to Coast AM Challenge with Bill Burns and George Norrie. Will you step up to the plate and take this polygraph exam? No, because a polygraph doesn't work. If a polygraph worked, we wouldn't need juries. We judge other people, other human beings, by their honesty, by empirical data and evidence as well, but by their spirit as well. And The spirit that I judged him by was what I was feeling from him, from his heart, from his mind. And I judged him by his relationship with his child, by how he regarded his mother, by all of these things that we choose to regard in the human family to make decisions about each other. The same things. I mean, these common things were still present. So there were many uncommon aspects to their society, to the negating of emotion and the negating of personal names out in society, but still being carried within families. There was a common theme to the human family which was still extant in his time, and I used that as part of my prudent discernment of him, or God, I hope it was, that he was a good human being. So
you assisted him in going through the Stargate.
I pushed the Segway type transport set on the stroller. They looked like bell jars almost, over the top of Segway type strollers, where you could, almost waist height, where the bar was, where you could push it in whatever direction, and it took very little effort to move it. And he asked me to go home.
So you pushed him, and
I did.
What happened to you when you pushed him?
I pushed forward, then the next feeling was a feeling of numbness. For a brief moment, I thought I really screwed up, maybe killed myself or whatever, because I literally felt numb everywhere. Then I remember a flash of gray, and then I was seated, coughing, on a block about 20, 30 meters away maybe. And I had people rushing up to me, still over dramatically, actually cocking an automatic firearm at me, screaming at me, and I was grabbed, picked up from the block, and taken over and said, you're under arrest. And I mean, I committed a violation of the protocols, and I was being threatened with weapons to my head and things like that.
So how did
What did he say to you? And are you a spy? And they were just acting paranoid. No, I wasn't a spy. I just shoved him into the Stargate, and he went bye-bye. And that's essentially what happened.
How did Majestic react after that to you?
Very angry, including the people with whom I'm the closest, save the one present. Very angry toward me.
And how do they act? How does Majestic act when it's angry? I guess this gets back to haven't you been tortured? I mean, isn't this right?
I don't call it torture, aside from the fact that I've been falsely imprisoned. That's torture. I was, for a couple periods of time, put at S4 in level 3 and basically told that's where you are for now.
Level 3 meaning, was it a
S4.
cell?
No, it was one of the rooms, one of the small suites, if you will, which were originally put in. There's 12 of them in this trident. There's 3 groups of 4, and I was put in Bay Unit 1 over to the left, and it was essentially, it contained all the amenities. I could ask for food, got anything I wanted, except for I couldn't leave. There was no freedom. I consider that torture. The other items are acts of unkindness. And acts of unkindness from Majestic can range from everything from psychological unkindness, being rude to you, to being threatening, to being physically harmful. And I have been beaten, I have been slapped, I have been physically restrained, meaning handcuffed, and beaten and slapped. I have been put under lights. Well, hell, I had friends doing that to me. But I had, put under intense lights and while being handcuffed, as in interrogated. I have been told to shut my mouth to the point where two people grabbed me. One shoved me down onto the floor of a garage, and the other one stomped on and broke my hand.
So, and these were the members of Majestic that carried out these
yes.
attacks? In
Yes,
other words, they didn't
not
hire
the J
someone?
numbers. Not the J numbers. These are operatives.
Operatives.
As in security personnel, yeah.
I see. So not the 1 through 12, but
oh, no,
people that work for
none
them.
of them have laid an unkind hand on me ever. Great affection, if anything, out of them.
But they were under
But then
orders.
again, one can show great affection to a pet.
Okay, so you were viewed as a pet by some of them, but you were also
I'm not saying that. I'm
mistreated
saying
on their
that-
orders?
I'm not saying I was viewed as a pet. I'm saying I don't know what they're truly carrying in their hearts, in their minds. And so there exists a possibility that affection can be granted either honestly or disingenuously. It can be granted person to person on the same level, or as an act of condescending.
Well, let's back up a tiny bit.
Well,
Majestic.
yeah, she brought up the name Tenet. George Tenet. Oh, I better watch my mouth.
Mm-hmm. That's why I hit the
I
name.
just started talking here too much.
I know.
George Tenet was a former director of Central Intelligence for the United States of America. Now we're moving on.
Okay. So, but what you were saying about Majestic has got me interested.
Sorry.
That's okay. You're basically saying that Majestic is operating as
What a screw.
independent of the government. Is that correct? Or are they operating
Yes and
under
no.
the...
Yes and no. They were set independent of direct presidential authority as far back as the late 40s. However, there's more than one individual who has set as a member of the 12 who are intimately involved with the United States government to include its highest levels.
Okay, and so those people were actually...
Okay, it's time to put the tap dancing shoes on.
Okay, those people were actually ordering you to be, as a result, let's say, of this sort of overstepping the line, pushing J-Rod into the Stargate. They were ordering you to be sequestered, to be beaten or harmed in some way.
By the time that happened, all the beatings happened prior to that. By the time that happened, there was basically, they didn't know what to do with me. It took everybody so by surprise. Me too. What I did. They didn't know what to do. And so they really didn't. I mean, I got hauled around there at the site for a while, and I got hauled back here to the U.S., but I was basically, after that, just told to go home. They didn't know what to do.
So is this why you've been released from Majestic, is because of this incident?
No. It was coming near the end of my time, my usefulness, basically, anyway, aside from being almost an elder statesman with them, because I'd been around for like 20 years. My physical condition has gotten worse. Not well, physically. So I would not be of any use inside of a laboratory.
Okay, but why is there... I understand that there's been some kind of adjournment.
There has been.
And now there's a new body, and it's not going to be comprised of the same people as the old body.
True.
So why? Why have they changed members? What's the motivation?
There's a switch over between two secret societies going on. One is handing reins over to the other, and it has been long planned. However, it's not been long known by me, but it's been long planned, probably decades. I'm certain it has to have been for decades.
So Majestic is ruled by a secret society, is what you're saying?
Well, Majestic has been the most famous next to probably the Freemasons, secret society of itself. And there are many of the Freemasons who inhabit the Majestic as a consequence of their relationships. The two things are happening at the same time. And so their philosophies then, the philosophies of these associated secret societies like the Scottish Rite and the York Rite, are then imparted into the secret society known as the Majestic.
So what's the quarrel between...
Because you bring who you are to wherever you are.
Sure. But what's the quarrel between, say, the Majestic Society or group and the Illuminati?
That is a real good, and it's the best question to be asked. Even more importantly than the differences between the J-Rods, because this impacts us, I think, now. Many members of the upper echelon, and I don't mean the hard-working people who work on construction sites, for God's sakes, but many people who are in the upper echelon of the Masonic movement, both York and Scottish Rite, have accepted a philosophy which is Luciferian in context and history. Many of the people who are not directly then involved with the Majestic, who are also associated with that Luciferian philosophy, have rubbed up against each other for decades, probably even longer. So somewhere along the line in history, there was a schism between those individuals who have accepted a Luciferian history, Luciferian philosophy, mixed with other secret society people who have not, that ended up in the Majestic, and people who have accepted a Luciferian, almost like a different denomination, if you will, accepted a Luciferian philosophy, who are not associated with the Majestic. In other words, we've got dirty coins on both sides.
Okay. And when you say a Luciferian philosophy...
meaning a materialistic, and for lack of a better term, when it comes to the actual European Illuminati, satanic philosophy, where they've given their lives, their families, their sacred honor to this satanic thought of creating a world order under the person that they consider the true God, which would be a Luciferian figure. Now, these people have also, separating them from the dirty coins in the Majestic side, these people have also been accepting of the influence of the P45 rogues, who want to justify their own history by our demise of moving from timeline 1 over to timeline 2, the catastrophe. And so the differences between the Majestic group, some of which there have been these Luciferians mixed in, and the true Illuminati group, and they're not even really true Illuminati. I mean, that's a word that comes back meaning enlightened ones, and these people are not enlightened. They're simply under the influence of a false light. That the differences between the two then have raised itself to rancor, even though they share much in common with each other. However, on the Majestic side, you have a lot of God-fearing people too. A lot, and I'm not talking about specifically here the 12. I'm talking about the line people, the people that we've worked with. Good people to the bone, to the soul, who want nothing but good for the world.
So basically what you're talking about is there seems to be an alliance between for lack of a better word, the so-called Illuminati group that is satanic followers, and the P45s, what you call the P45s, and the Majestic group, which, even though it has some members from the Illuminati, basically is siding with the P52s.
Yeah, I wouldn't really call them I would say that they are Freemasons who have accepted the Luciferian influence. In other words, I personally disagree with it. The Luciferian influence, but are still acting as good people.
For the benefit of humanity.
For the benefit of humanity, exactly. And then there are some that I've interacted with who are involved with the so-called true Illuminati in Europe that are God-fearing people too. There's dirty coins and there's polished coins on both sides. However, the dirty coins make up the vast majority of the group on the European Illuminati side.
Okay. So now let's get to the timelines and explain just briefly, since this gets over into the future and 2012, what the P45s, meaning they are from the future 45,000 years ahead of
45,000 years ahead on a separate timeline than what we are presently on, or a timeline that we could transition over to from where we are now. So, if we are to accept that we transition, God forbid, from timeline 1 to timeline 2, they would be considered 45,000 years and 52,000 years, respectively, ahead of us. The individuals who dumped near Roswell, New Mexico, back in the 40s, were approximately 24,000 years ahead of us in timeline 2. And that was a mission return, an Earth-to-Earth time travel mission.
That we're on timeline 1, I'm assuming you're saying, and we're headed for 2012, and theoretically a catastrophe that may or may not happen.
Right around now, yeah.
Right around now?
Yeah.
And this catastrophe, has this got anything to do with Planet X?
I don't know. There is the most honest answer I can provide you. I know of a lot of lore about a rogue planet coming in. However, the material that I've actually seen on a repetitive crossing, if you will, of Earth with catastrophic influences happens not only because of a matter of physics, of rogue, and I don't mean this toward like J-Rod rogue, but rogue crossings near Earth asteroids or comets. What I have heard is that to precipitate the catastrophe, there would be, as we pass into the plane of the Milky Way, some sort of energetic burst through the plane of the galaxy by virtue of wormholes that travel through the plane of the galaxy from the center of the galaxy, which have been depicted in ancient lore called the serpent rope, even of the ancients. And that the serpent rope would return at the time of the end of the Mayan calendar, revealing, and there are several perspectives as to what it will reveal. But that during this same time, the history of the J-Rods record that this burst will cause a disruption in the sun, and that concomitantly with energetic bursts from the sun and from the wormholes which would be passing through our planet, that there would be a disaster provoked by virtue of these time travel devices, the Stargate devices, and the time viewing devices, the looking glass devices, spontaneously turning on and directing an inappropriate amount of energy into the crust of the earth, precipitating a geophysical disaster. This geophysical disaster, in accordance with the history of the J-rods, the Orions, record that over 4,157,000,000 die over a several-year period by virtue of a geophysical shift in the crust.
So this is what
I get numb when I think of numbers that way.
Is trying to be prevented. Is this right?
Yes, very true.
And how is it going to be prevented?
By the disabling and the destruction of such technology, that we will naturally then pass through this serpent ropes. The bursts will occur, whatever that means. I don't know, I haven't physically seen it. But the bursts will occur, and there would be an imparting of energy to our planet that will gradually, naturally, cause changes in the human species and the life on our planet. And that these changes would be positive changes to our people. And I frankly think that it's already happening. There's a rise worldwide and I don't think it's just given the size of the population increase. But there is a rise in very spiritual, talented people. There is a rise in savants, the indigo children. It's definitely, from what I've seen from reading about them, a real phenomenon. These children are of a new time, and I think they're of the timeline time. We're seeing, I think, in these children, these great kids, an expression of what we will be in our own future, our next kind of step ahead. You're not looking millions of years ahead or anything like that, but our next step ahead. And it's a wonderful rise in consciousness that I think will precipitate the next renaissance for our people. I see it happening. The numbers that we received before the looking glass was shut down, dismantled, was that there would be a 19% probability with an 85% confidence that the disaster would occur, that there would be a transitioning from timeline 1 to timeline 2. But that then means that there is an 81% chance that it won't. And so the individuals who want to carry the negative, I'm convinced that it's going to occur, are not presenting the facts. The facts are, this is the material that we have available that we know.
So what you're saying is the Illuminati, to get back to that thread,
yes,
is basically the side that believes that the transition is going to occur from one timeline to the other.
Not only do they believe that it will occur, they want to provoke it.
But how does it benefit them to provoke it? Why should they want to be P45s?
They don't. The living ones don't. They're looking at the P45s as a means to an end for them. They're not going to live that long. They're just going to live a normal human life and die. So they want the control for themselves. The fact that the P45s, that's how immoral these people are. The fact that the P45s are wanting us to, at their stage in their own development, have a disaster which justifies their own history, is being used as a means to an end by the Illuminati, who would like to see that the population is culled so that they can gain greater control. They don't care.
So, okay, so
they just want for themselves. There are really human beings that don't care, or that care that little.
So what you're saying is the Illuminati want the catastrophe to occur,
yes,
so that a certain number, 3/4 is the number I've heard, of humanity dies, They
Well,
get the Earth
history
to
reads
themselves.
about a little over 2/3. That's what the history
Okay,
of the J-rods
2/3.
actually read.
All right, 2/3. And then what? I mean, they've still had to live through Earth changes and cataclysms, right?
Right. But these people are also the ones who have their guaranteed positions in the safety zones, underground facilities, etc. And so they are presumed. It is not known for certain, but they are presumed to actually then be the progenitors, if you will, of the people who become the J-rods.
Understand. But in a sense, there is a thought that, in a sense, the P45s, that side of humanity possibly becomes almost soulless.
They become repressed. They still have their same souls because even after 7,000 more years of development, I could see the soul. I mean, as you see the heart of another human being, I could see the soul in Kaela. So it didn't.
But Kaela was not
back.
a P45.
No, he was a P52. But that just means that he was 7,000 years along the T2 timeline from when the P45s
So
were in
he
existence.
used to be, or his people used to be a P45.
Yes.
And a P46, 47, 48.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the soul didn't go away and then come back. It's been there. But then, you know what? Look, you can say that some people are soulless. The Nazis. How much soul did they have when they threw my grandpa onto a car? How much soul did they have? We know what they had, a human soul. As black as apparently what it was, or as covered over in their demented brains. But I still pray for them that they've been made whole with God. But they still had their souls, even though it was repressed.
So,
in like manner, the P45s have a soul.
Okay. Well then, okay, you've talked about the P52 Orions and the P52 J-rods. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What causes the split? Because the Orions, I'm thinking, are the blonde Nordics.
They're the ones that prefer to stay out of the safety zones when it happens. They are the survivors who do not go underground.
Are these good? Is this a good division of humanity? I mean, the P52 Orion
I don't consider any
Nordics.
division of humanity good. I consider them the more positive of the two because I consider the positive aspects of humanity to be the spiritual aspects.
So you're saying the Nordic line is spiritual?
Yeah,
More
extremely,
spiritual.
Extremely, yeah.
Okay. So how does the Nordic line, I mean, you say they stay out.
They actually move off from Earth first. The J-rods, or the precursors to the J-rods, stay on Earth for a great deal of time. Well after 24,000 years from the time of the transition, like 24,000 years from now, because there were 24 or so thousand years ahead of us when they crashed in Roswell in 1947. Those were 24s. They stay. The Orions move off first to the place after the reestablishment of the society on the surface of the Earth. Technology is refurbished, etc. They move off to the place where the Ark is held.
Which is where?
Our nearest body, the Moon.
The Moon.
Where on it, I'm not going to say.
Okay. Well, this
Because I'm
gets
having
into...
to defend against the possibility of Timeline 1 transitioning over to Timeline 2 in a manner different than I've been told. And I'm not going to be the person who hands off the wrong information.
So, okay, but you're saying the Nordics are going to get off Earth if the catastrophe happens, or regardless,
They leave after.
after the catastrophe happens.
Presumably several thousand years after it happens. They
Several
leave.
thousand years.
Yes,
I
they
was
move
getting
to
the
moon.
impression you were talking
Oh,
about
not
them
really.
going on spaceships or something.
No. They move off to the moon several thousand years via spacecraft. They get to the place where the Ark was held, and they reestablish a new community. From there, they move to Mars. from Mars out to Orion.
So
Talking a lot of time here.
the face on Mars is this. Are we looking at something that was left behind by the Nordics?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking
as best
forward.
as I know.
We're looking forward to our future when we're looking at the ruins.
Yeah, we're looking at a paradox of their ruins, which they left on another planet.
In our future.
In our future.
In our possible future.
Yep.
Okay, well, to come back to this
She's
future...
actually got the best command of this information of anyone in the public with whom I've spoken.
I know. Thank you. That's a very sweet thing to say.
It's honest.
Thank you. We've got I'm getting another question here from our small audience, and I must say that Bill Ryan is...
Bill O'Ryan? I'll be Ryan?
Bill Ryan is also sitting with me and listening to this amazing information and asking some good questions.
When we're looking at Mars, are we therefore looking at the future?
Now the question
I
is
just
this.
don't understand that. We're looking
The
to a telescope?
question of the day is that what is going to happen? What is going to happen when the transition occurs and we either continue on one or, God forbid, number two happens? If number two happens, we're not going to be worried about Mars. We will have much more important things to worry about at that moment. Let's say, God willing, and I think we will, remain on timeline 1. What's going to happen with our imagery of Mars? I think we'll probably remember taking images of these anomalous structures. And there have been some anomalous structures imaged on the moon as well. So I think we're probably going to remember that. At least I think so. If we don't, it's not going to matter now, is it?
So what you're saying is we're going to go back to the idea that there is no face on Mars.
Or there will be a face on Mars, and it will be presented to us at that moment as something different. Maybe the bricks will turn to rocks, and we will get there and find out that all of these beautiful ruins, including the scorpion. If you don't think it's a scorpion, tell me what it is. Okay, I'll show you the images from Star City on the top of this pyramid. If it's not a scorpion, tell me what it is. But perhaps we're going to get there and we're going to find out that all of this presumed architecture that we are seeing by virtue of the geometry that we're attempting to apply to these images is nothing more than rocks. That we've never been there. Because at that moment, because we had not transited over to timeline 2, that we have never visited there until we finally put, quote unquote, man on Mars.
But there's a profound paradox here, because
there is.
Because what I hear you saying is that we're looking through telescopes where we're receiving light in present time with a few minutes difference. That's being reflected off objects on the surface of Mars, but we're actually looking at a possible future.
That's right.
I don't understand.
There are impacts into our timeline now which have occurred. This is information that I received not only from CAMELOT, but also from the material within Majestic. There are impacts into our reality now, our timeline now, by virtue of the amount of time travel which has occurred. Every time they have gone back in time, they have caused small paradoxes which have built up as our reality that we now perceive. In other words, there is actual Newtonian superimposing. And that is a frightening thing to me.
So it's almost like putting money in the bank, though, every time they come from the P45s, in a sense. Their timeline becomes...
as creating a larger heap of manure.
Well, okay, but emphasis appreciated. However, nonetheless, it is like a deposit towards the actual occurrence happening.
I don't know.
They are agents of change, in a sense.
They are agents of change, as all human beings are agents of change. But I don't know whether there is a cause-effect, whether there's a nexus between cause and effect, having to do with their amount of time travel and the superimposition which is going on in our reality, and the disaster itself. I think that the disaster itself, from everything that I've read and heard, is a direct consequence of the technological aspect of bringing too much energy toward us in a non-natural manner.
Okay, well, basically, you're saying there's two timelines. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the work of physicists now that are saying, look, if you can have two timelines, you can have 2 million.
Well, don't we really have 3 or 4? I'm discussing 24,000s, I'm discussing 45,000s, 52,000s, and present day. How many timelines are that? Because these people moved ahead linearly in their timeline. Just because we want to call it timeline 2 doesn't mean that there are other effects or superimposings which are occurring on different realities during even their own timelines.
Exactly. I mean, there's a sense at which what you're talking about is not so much that the P45s, for example, timeline won't exist, as it will actually separate from our reality and become more like a parallel reality instead of an intersecting one.
From what I understand, the people who were just prior, which would be us, according to their history, to the people who were just after, exist as a straight vector of time. So in other words, God forbid the catastrophe occur, it will just appear as tomorrow the catastrophe occurs, etc., and we move forward and changes start occurring in the earth. There is a disaster, there is a loss of huge life, etc. We won't probably feel anything change aside from the fact that we'll all be running scared for our lives. Aside from that, I have no explanation.
Okay, you're saying if the catastrophe occurs.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't occur, there's still the element in which we have been visited by a timeline in which really does exist in a sense. And how do you unmake something which has been made? That's kind of, I mean, it's more of a philosophical question.
I don't know, and all I can do is defer to the Creator on that issue. Because all we do is perturb.
What has told you that this is true?
All of the above.
Okay.
It's all of the above, plus information directly from Majestic, I think.
Why is Majestic in a place to know that this actually happens or doesn't happen? In other words, you've got the looking glass technology that they use and you use, and you're instrumental in discovering. Were you in?
No. This is an original technology which was derived from ancient cylinder seals by people from our future who provided it to us, meaning the rogues, the P45s.
Okay, the people from our negative future.
That's right. We wouldn't have this lovely technology if it wasn't planted in our past for us to use now. The entirety of the technology must either be disabled or destroyed.
In other words, to unmake the technology.
Until at least after we pass through this time period. There is no way, from the deceit, the conceit, the avarice, and the greed that I have been around over the last 20 years amongst the good side of these two dirty coins. There is no way that they're not going to start this equipment back up again if it's usable after this. Of course they're going to. Come on. I mean, they've got this, it's like a magic box to try to see into the future. What they're going to do with our future with regard to that, I've got no clue. I have no power over it, and I have no clue.
Okay, so this looking glass technology comes from cylinder seals.
Originally, yes.
How?
Originally, it was a series of instructions for accessing the wormholes which naturally pass in the hyperspace in which we find ourselves. And from there, they worked on the technology. They built the equipment from the instructions. After building the equipment from the instructions, they began to tweak it and find different things out about it. One of the things that they found is that they could actually use it as a peering portal, like a peering glass, if you will, to see different aspects of not only the future but the past.
Are these
And
Sumerian?
I would say that they slightly predate Sumerian time frame, but that some of the information which came down from cylinder seals that slightly predated the Sumerian time frame were then recopied in Sumerian seals as well. And those cylinder seals, oh yes, and those cylinder seals, to the best of my knowledge, have all been obtained.
From Iraq.
Some of them from Iraq, yes.
Some of them from
Some of
Egypt?
them from Egypt, some of them from other countries where they were being stored.
And
I really don't want to get my country into too many problems here.
and you've got go ahead
For a second, it's. I want to reiterate, the Rogue P-45s jumped back, seeded this technology, because that's what they wanted to do, was to seed the land to help facilitate the catastrophe. Because by placing this technology available, they knew that it would be utilized, and as long as we as people, oh my God, they wanted to go back and seed the technology, because they felt that as people we would be unable to break ourselves away from using that technology.
How is it that this technology is being utilized now? And isn't, if you're talking about a wormhole, isn't it the same thing as a Stargate?
Essentially, yes. The technology is not being utilized now. Anywhere we find it, we take it.
Who's we? Because you have warring factions. You've got the Illuminati on one hand. You've got the Majestic on another.
We as the United States as part of the UN. NATO. I don't really want to comment too much about NATO and who's controlling the NATO alliance at this point. But
isn't it a fact that the Illuminati
we're doing most of the lion's share.
Would be stealing back this looking? I mean, if they want it to happen, their objective would be to steal these cylinders and get them on, so that they could use the looking glass technology.
Yes, but they can't show up as an aggressor to steal anything back. So what they do is they vote against us.
How does that stop looking glass technology?
It plays out in the UN. Well, we had looking glass technology and portal, actual Stargate technology in Iraq as late as the start of 2003. And a lot of countries didn't want us to enter Iraq. We did though, didn't we?
Right. But how is it that, in other words, it sounds
Omar
like...
just handed his two over. We just told him that we were going to make him rich beyond avarice. And he was a little smarter than Saddam, that's all. And so what he did is he handed them over and says, "Oh, please come into my country." He says, look at my equipment to make sure that I'm not making any weapons of mass destruction. Meanwhile, out the back door goes the two that Saddam actually had transferred over to him.
Cylinders.
Equipment. Stargate. Activating technology.
Portal.
Yeah, for them to experiment with. They were experimenting.
But if the looking glass technology is the same thing, is accesses a wormhole. The technology accesses a wormhole.
Yes.
It also accesses stargates.
Well, that's essentially the same thing. I've been using the term Stargates technology as meaning a machine that accesses a wormhole by spreading out the energy, the strange matter, or whatever it is, and I'm not a physicist, that spreads it out in a compatible way to either communicate through it or passage of information. And that includes also...
But it occurs naturally. Stargates occur naturally.
Indeed they do.
So how do you close those?
You don't, and we don't want to. We don't want to. The history reads that the natural passage of us through this energetic space is a good thing. But it's our use of technology which provokes the catastrophe.
So it's
our enhancement of this natural system, inappropriate enhancement, which provokes the catastrophe. And so, no, we don't want that to happen. I think that the energetics that we're passing through is part of what's happening to us naturally that's changing us in a positive way. It's part of the loving cosmos that we're part of. I think that's probably one of the factors, not all, but one of the factors for the rise of these beautiful children, the indigo children. And I'm all for it.
So we want to leave the stargates, the natural stargates. They are leaving those alone.
Right. We want to keep our hands up from nature. Pull our hands away. Get it away from the fruit of the tree of life, so to speak. Get it away and just let nature happen during this time. That will be a good thing. However, we also have people who oppose that because they want what they want.
Okay, so tell us about
okay, well, the Men in Black phenomenon.
the Men in Black, yeah.
Part of it is a psychological operations unit within Majestic. And they operate to scare people away from things that they've seen that they don't want them, further bringing information out in the population of the so-called giggle factor. Anything above that, they attempt or have attempted, I don't even know that they're still in operation, to suppress. Then you have the real McCoy. The real McCoy is not human. The real McCoy is in fact a P-45J rod. They are using, through the use of some sort of sinuous biomechanical technology, the skin of a dead human.
Wow.
It is a dead human. These are the ones that walk up to you and they look like they're shuffling, like they've just filled their drawers. When they speak through this technology that they have wrapping around them, they sound very bland, very monotone, and they don't belong. You can tell very quickly that they don't belong.
Have you met one?
I've met several of them. They were operating around my work at Sunchase before we were moved to a different location. Yes, they're very sallow in appearance. They thought that it was an appropriate expression to sing me happy birthday one year over at, I think it was the start of 2003. It was either 03 or 04. 03, I believe it was. Yeah. And I did not like being around them, and they will not think twice but to use force on you. They will hit you. They will push you. One did me. Marcia, not that long ago, got her fill of both types. Both the psychological operations people who attempted a few years ago to scare her off over at Winchester Park. Those were human beings. They were just striking fear in her. And one actual real McCoy nib. And this thing, I actually saw it first. It wandered onto, they get confused easily. That's a good thing. Wandered onto our property at, where we're presently living. And I was walking home from her apartment at the time, and I thought a child was swinging on the swing. There's a swing set out in front of my apartment. The closer I got, I thought that it was a little older kid wearing black. Then I noticed it had a hat on. And he said, "Swing, fun." He was lost in a memory, apparently, of the person that he was wearing. And I looked at him and got very afraid inside because they carry weapons. They can be killed with weapons too. He was not supposed to be on our property. Our security did not do its real job. We're not worried about the two-legged real humans that just walk around. It's these things.
So he was the size of a child? Is that what you're saying?
No, I thought it was a child on the swing set as I was walking up. It was past dusk. It was dark out there.
So he
And
was a normal size
He was a normal size.
man,
Yeah.
full-grown person.
Yep. Yeah, he was wearing all black and a black preacher's type hat, round brimmed.
How do you get rid of him?
Well, how do you get rid of
Yeah.
him? Well, it would be very good if a person could actually. I've got to be careful in suggesting that because they are still human beings. They took him into security. Ultimately, took him into custody. Just want to be careful, liability-wise, of making a suggestion on how to get rid of one of them. But
People could miscue, and,
Right.
and we wouldn't want to have a problem.
no, say, well, Dr. Burisch said do this or that. There shouldn't be that many walking around to worry about. But and it wasn't even sent there to deal with me. It was sent there to deal with her. And it found itself apparently lost in a memory in the swing set. And I said, good, swing to it. And inside I'm going, oh, shit. Walked in, keyed the door to my apartment, pressed the emergency button for security, hoping then that they were going to respond. Went in and told my mother-in-law what was going on. She looked out of the window and said, yep. She's been in the Majestic family all of her life. She said, yeah. Then the oldest got up, looked out the window and said, that's what one looks like. It was her first experience seeing one. I said, yeah. And I said, Doris, go over here. And I unlocked something and I pulled something out for her. And I said, while I leave here, because I'm going to do the hurt bird routine, lead it away. Because, I mean, there was 3 kids in there. I said, I don't know what its intention is. It may have a lethal intention here, and it's just presently lost. As soon as it gets done swinging, it may pull a weapon out. I said, so if it comes near here, defend yourself and defend the kids. Meanwhile, I'm going to grab something else. Yes, I grabbed a weapon, and I'm going to try to lead it away. By the time I had the second weapon out and was armed, it was walking off already toward her apartment's direction. So I said, okay, well, I still have to get it in case it turns around, because if it knows where I went into the apartment, I have to lead it away because there are kids in here. There's little girls in here. And so I walked toward it, past it, walked clear by it, and it just continued shuffling ahead slowly up the sidewalk, gradually toward her apartment. Got over to her apartment. I said, where in the hell is security? So we were pushing buttons over there. Nobody's responding. Got on the radio. Nobody responds. I said, you have a MIB walking toward your apartment right now. She said, a MIB? I said, an ET. I said, they are dangerous, as you're well aware, but it's her first experience with something like this. I said, come here, look. It can't possibly, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't walking back toward my apartment where the girls were. I said, it can't possibly have reached here by now. I mean, it's walking slowly. And so she came out with me, and she went over by the wall behind a bush, and she didn't see it initially. It was hidden like in the recesses of the light as it was walking up in one of the shadowed areas, because now the lights had kicked on the exterior of the buildings, all of that. And I walked up onto the sidewalk and saw it, and I turned my back on it at that point. They don't run. So I turned my back on it and I said, you may want to be going that way to Marcy. And she said, because she's not the faint of heart female, she said, why? And then she saw it over my shoulder and laid her first eyes on an ET. and her eyes got about that big, which is the normal reaction, and she walked. Give you some credit. She actually walked from there back toward the corner of the building before I saw her break into something more than a walk. She walked away from it. By then, I'm still standing there, and this thing walked by me. Now, I'm wondering why it's here. And I said, "Hi." And it turned this close to me and said, "Hello." And then just continued to walk. Walked right past me like I wasn't even there. Toward her. I thought, well, okay. It has an assignment. We don't know what the assignment is because it will not give up its intention behaviorally before it carries out its assignment. And I wasn't sure if it was armed or what, so I walked by it again. This is how slow it is shuffling. It walks like it's got poop in its pants. I mean, that's how you can. I mean, they are clearly not comfortable in the skin. I walked by it again. Now I have made certain adjustments to the firearm I had on me because I was figuring that whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen fairly soon. And if it pulled a weapon out, I was going to do what I learned in the police department and do it well for probation. Got back to her, got all the way into her apartment, locked the door. I then said, "You go get your gun. If it pulls a weapon out, you've been a former cop too, do what you do, and do it well." By that time, we were both shaking, figuring, it was going to turn into something very bad. It sat down on the stairway outside of her apartment, and it had a bag with it. It was a black bag of some sort, and I didn't know what was in it. It could have been anything. And it just sat there. And then it got up, and it walked past her apartment. And now I'm looking at her like, what the hell is this? Still no security. Finally, after it had made its way all the way to the basketball court area, and stood there and looked around, still confused. Security came up with its weapons drawn and took it into custody. Put it in one of the vans, and off it went. They cuffed it, like a human being would be cuffed, and they took it. She got a couple photographs off. We actually, because it walked down toward the court, I was looking through the window and said, well, there's no way it could hit us from here, even if it does have a gun on it or whatever. She stepped out onto her porch and she took a couple photographs. It was a disposable.
I found a disposable camera. It was up on the bookshelf near the door, and I just
disposable.
grabbed it, and that's all I had.
She took a couple photographs of it, and we have since made those public on the Eagles Disobey forum. Those are real. It's the real McCoy. The best I could do, the enhancements that show one after another with it, bringing it out from the background. Those are the best enhancements I could do because the original photographs that we put up there too, you saw, it was just basically jet black. There was no carrying of the flash, and it was not set for night speed or anything like that. It was an indoor-outdoor type daytime camera, a disposable camera, but it was all that was available. Now, security took photographs and all of that, but they don't share them. Right. At the same time, I was doing my weekly reports, and I detailed it in my weekly report, and I allowed that weekly report to be made available too, where I said, the MIB was taken into custody and no one was injured. But he just walked onto her property. Assignment still to this day unknown. Well, following 20 years of service for the Majestic, last October the 12th, which was October the 12th, 2005. I was dismissed at the time of their adjournment to complete a final set of orders, if you will, to present the information which I had learned over the last 20 years concerning the extraterrestrial intelligences to the world or to whomever wanted to hear. For the last year's time, we have been committed to a debriefing of my service since 1986, and even actually before that, we've arranged to speaking about my early life as well. We're hoping that within a short period of time, DVDs will be completed and this will be presented, and this will then conclude my service to Majestic with a very big relief, and thank God. Right now, we are presently in the middle of several different projects, inclusive of which is Project Lotus, which has basically been dispatched and dismissed to me after the years of service as well. This
Meaning
project,
it was turned over to you?
well, it's been turned over. I don't think that the folks from the former Majestic are continuing to research it all. I really don't think that they want anything to do with it after the problems that we've had and associated problems at a couple different facilities involving, we'll say, extraneous energy emissions around the project.
So-
Have caused some damage to their equipment.
Well, to back up a tiny bit, could you tell us what is Project Lotus?
Sure. In May of 2001, we traveled to Frenchman Mountain here in Nevada to begin a real project looking for a biomarker for a possible precursor virus. It was a rather prosaic study looking for evidence for panspermia. During the course of that initial investigation, we came across some anomalous activity in some of our data sets. That anomalous activity was ultimately tracked down to very unusual electromagnetic activity associated with silicon oxides. And we have since tracked that anomalous activity to any silicon oxides present in minerals. To wit, the activity is the presence of an emission of electromagnetic bundles containing information. We are presently attempting to further define the nature of that electromagnetic anomalous activity. But we have, in fact, determined that the activity is associated with cells within the terrestrial environment, and that they have effects upon cells in our terrestrial environment, up to and including modifying the genetic material of extant cells in our environment.
Are you saying living cells?
Yes. We have, together with these electromagnetic emissions that we have defined with relative precision to date to be specific varieties of what we termed as particles. We had to call them something. They're bundles of electromagnetic material, confined discrete bundles, that we believe are possibly related to, as far back as the ancient Pavitrakas of the Hindus, subtle matter particles, which could be imparted into our environment and affect changes. Thus far, we have not observed negative changes, meaning the effects of these subtle matter particles, if you will, have not affected our environment negatively.
But you have had interruptions as a result of those particles.
Well, we've had
anomalous activity, you said.
We've had anomalous thermal emissions when too much or too little energy was imparted to the silicon oxide bearing material. We have had unusual drains of batteries around the activity, and have not defined why. But there have been two phenomena associated with Lotus that have been particularly striking to me as a biologist. We've had resets of cells which have occurred, and I say resets because I'm trying not to make it sound Frankenstein-like, where there have been heat-fixed yeast cells which have been used as offered, if you will, to this phenomenon as target cells. And upon the receipt of material of these dead heat-fixed yeast cells, we've had a restart of the cells, and we have the photographic and the...
So they've come back to life, is what you're saying, as a result of this.
There has been
energy.
Yes. I really don't even like using those terms. It's out of the book, off the edge of the pizza, so to speak. But we have had a restart of the cells in that location. However, the cells which have restarted from the dead cells are not the same cells, are not the same functioning cells as the precursor cells, the precursor yeast cells. We don't really know what they are.
You mean, are you saying that the cells changed and they're functioning differently after being exposed to this energy?
Yes, we started out with essentially a fungal cell, a budding yeast cell, which we heat fixed, and the result was more termed what one would normally term an animal-like cell.
Really? So it actually changed it from one thing. It actually transformed it from one thing to another.
It transformed it from one thing to another after imparting to it what we've come to call a template. There is an actual imparting of DNA to the cell. So we're receiving DNA essentially across some sort of an electromagnetic barrier through these what we call portals, these emissions of electromagnetic energy that then impart further discrete bundles of electromagnetism to our environment.
So
we're attempting to understand it. We don't understand what we are truly looking at the moment. We've not fully defined the Lotus as a system.
Okay, but are the particles, are these the Ganesh particles that are coming through?
We've defined three basic discrete varieties of particles that we have termed alpha, beta, and C-type particles. The A-type particles were nicknamed Ganesh particles, and that's what they are. They're nicknames. We had to call them something, so we called them Ganesh particles out of a historical deference, if you will, for the mover of obstacles. And we called the portals Shiva portals, as an opening or a changing. These are the admission or emission centers, if you will, for these Ganesh particles. And then we have still another variety of particle, which we call Selkies, and Marcia actually named them. These are C-type particles, and they basically act as almost like crossing guards, which line the periphery of an electromagnetic stream that leaves these portals, and basically act as guards or guideways surrounding the Ganesh particles, giving them a pathway to a target. Now the real question, I think, is how is the decision being made for a target? And we've identified on these Selkies what appear to be acoustic antennae. And I say appear to be acoustic antennae because changes of input into this system, acoustic changes, affect the behavior of these Selkie particles.
Sound. In other words,
Yes.
Sound is affecting the Selkie particles, causing them to redirect the energy towards a target or away from a target?
Causing them to redirect their positions which confine an electromagnetic stream or a river, if you will, being emitted from these portals. And we've wondered what the portals are. They might be micro wormholes. Okay. We don't know right now.
And these are nano-sized portals? Is that
no,
what
these are microscopic sized. Somewhere within the 20 to well, it'd be very transient, up to 50, but around the 10 to 20 micrometer size. And so they're observable quite readily under a compound microscope if the conditions are held constant and if they are treated delicately. They're extremely transient phenomena.
In other words, you don't have a control over them.
No. And in fact, we don't do any direct propagations anymore. The last direct propagation was done last November, and we received for the second time an anomalous growth of cells in the medium surrounding the crystal that we were using. We were using a quartz crystal because of the silicon oxide nature of the quartz crystal. And we received an anomalous growth of cells of unknown origin around the crystal. So we do not know where these cells were from. We've had that happen now twice, and we've determined that we're getting a little too good, if you will, at the science of propagating these portals, and we're possibly receiving a negative consequence as a result.
In other words, those could actually be an alien life form.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed, they could.
Very interesting.
They could be extraterrestrial.
Cells. They're microscopic, cells, right? So.
Right. I mean, we've received a mix of very unusual cells, which I was not able to cytologically type, and also cells which appeared nearly prosaic to our ocean here. Microscopic one-celled organisms, haptophytes.
But they came out of nowhere.
The material that we had provided to the experiment prohibited a cross-contamination, the ability for this to have been a cross-contamination. So they came from somewhere. They came from somewhere. Now, also, what we've done is a repeat of a very famous experiment called the Spallanzani experiment with beef broth, but we put a tweak on it, if you will. In the Spallanzani experiments were experiments designed to either prove or disprove the idea of spontaneous generation. And so the question is then begged, are we exhibiting spontaneous generation here? And I think that we have zero evidence that this is spontaneous generation. And allow me to explain why. The Spallanzani experiment that we repeated, we did it exactly the way the famous experiment was originally done, with beef broth that had been boiled, but we actually had it autoclaved, so that we had pressure and heat both acting on it, getting rid of all the spore formers, everything that could have been present in there as a living organism. We left some open, some closed, and then we did a closed and an open experiment where we applied electricity and a silicon oxide bearing crystal to it. And in the case where we had the closed study done, we received the growth of cells in that closed study, which appeared to me to be neural cells and organized neural cells, to the point where we could actually tell morphologically that there was an ABAB pattern which was developing. I wouldn't say that I was in a panic, but Marcia is nodding her head rapidly off the camera. I was in a near panic to cease the study then and there so that we weren't accidentally producing something with sentience.
Wow.
Not my right. That would have been an abomination of some variety. I don't practice the tools of science devoid of moral considerations. Some nowadays, I think, have no problem, no compunction against that. I do. So the study was ceased immediately, and the cells were photographed. Yes, we have the photographs of them, but the study was ceased, and it was killed immediately.
Okay, well, this is really kind of earth-shaking information that you've got here, and now
Very
that
humbling
I'm getting it
for me.
in a way that I understand, it makes it very clear.
Wow.
But
Thank you, Dan. That was quite enlightening.